Homeowners insurance is one of the biggest parts of protecting your investment when you buy a home. But for a lot of first-time home buyers, it can also be one of the least understood parts of the process. What does it actually cover? What doesn't it cover? Why are some homes dramatically more expensive to insure than others? In this video, we're going to break down homeowners insurance in simple terms and walk through the basics every buyer in New Hampshire and Maine should understand before closing on a home. Hi everyone, I'm Kaylee with Portsmouth Atlantic Insurance. We work with homeowners throughout New Hampshire, Maine, and Massachusetts. And today we're doing a true homeowners insurance one-on-one video, especially for you first-time homebuyers. The easiest way to think about homeowners insurance is this. It's designed for sudden and accidental losses. Not slow problems, not neglect, not things that happen because the house simply got old. So let's use a few examples. If a windstorm comes throughout the seacoast and rips shingles off your roof, that may be covered. If your roof is 28 years old and simply wearing out naturally over time, usually not covered. Another example, if a pipe suddenly bursts in the middle of the winter and floods your kitchen, that's the type of thing insurance is designed for. But if there's been a tiny leak dripping behind a wall for 5 years and there's mold and rot everywhere, generally not considered long-term deterioration, not a sudden accidental loss. The first major part of your policy is called dwelling coverage. That's the actual structure of your house. So think walls, roof, floors, attached garage, built-ins, kitchen cabinets, things like that. If you flip the house upside down and it stays in place or attached, that's what we're talking about here. And here's an important point a lot of buyers misunderstand. Insurance companies are not insuring your home based on Zillow value or what you paid for the house. They're insuring what it would cost to rebuild the home. Those are not always the same thing. For example, you could buy a small waterfront cottage in Maine for a premium price because of the location and the land value, but the actual structure itself may not cost nearly as much to rebuild. The reverse can happen too. Sometimes an older home in Rochester or Dover sells for less than what rebuilding it today would actually cost because construction, labor, and materials in New England are very expensive. The next part is personal property coverage. That's your belongings inside the home. Your furniture, clothing, electronics, kitchen stuff, your golf clubs, your diamonds, your Roku, whatever the heck it is. So let's say there's a fire in your condo building and your entire apartment has smoke damage. Even if the structure itself belongs to the condo association, your personal belongings may still be covered under your condo policy. And here's something people don't think about until they have to pack for a move. Most people own way more stuff than they realize. If you had to replace every shirt, every plate, every chair, fork, TV, mattress, whatever, it adds up super quick. Liability coverage is one of the most important parts of a homeowner's policy, and honestly one of the least understood. This helps protect you financially if someone gets injured or you're found responsible. For example, let's say your friend slips on icy steps during a New Hampshire winter and gets seriously injured, or your dog bites somebody, or the neighborhood kid accidentally steps on his sister's arm on your trampoline and her arm looks like this. That happened once at my house growing up. That's where liability coverage may come into play. And this is why people with pools, docks, trampolines, large dogs, or lake properties often need to think carefully about liability protection. Another important piece is additional living expenses, sometimes called loss of use coverage. This helps if your home becomes temporarily unlivable after a covered claim. For example, if a kitchen fire causes major smoke damage and you can't live in the house for 3 months while repairs happen, this coverage may help pay for things like hotel stays, temporary rentals, or meals or eating out while you can't cook in your own kitchen. Okay, let's get into what home insurance does not cover. This is where a lot of first-time homebuyers get surprised. Flooding is one of the biggest examples. A lot of people assume flood damage is automatically included in their homeowner's policy. Usually it's not. Flood insurance is typically separate. And here in parts of New Hampshire and Maine, flood zones absolutely matter, especially near the coast, rivers, or certain low-lying areas. Another thing not covered is routine maintenance. So if your deck is rotting because it's old, or your chimney slowly deteriorates over 20 years, insurance generally won't cover replacing those things. Think of it this way. Insurance covers unexpected events. Maintenance covers aging. One thing that's important for buyers to understand is that home policies can often be customized with additional coverages and endorsements. And especially here in New Hampshire and Maine, there are a few that come up pretty frequently. One example is service line coverage. A lot of homeowners don't realize they actually may be responsible for underground utility lines running from the street to the house. This can include your water lines, sewer lines, electric lines, or certain drainage lines. So if a tree root damages a buried sewer line in your yard, for example, repairs can be very expensive very quickly. Service line coverage is designed to help with situations like that. Another important one for older homes in New England is ordinance or law coverage. A lot of homes throughout the seacoast area were built decades ago, sometimes over 100 years ago. I know personally mine's from 1880. If there's a major covered loss, rebuilding the home may require bringing parts of the structure up to current building codes. So for example, updated electrical panels, updated framing requirements, or newer safety standards. standards. Those added costs are not always automatically covered without ordinance or law protection. Water backup coverage is another endorsement many homeowners consider. This is different from flooding. This generally refers to situations like a sump pump fails, the sewer backs up into the toilet, or water backing up through the drains, and unfortunately those claims can create a lot of damage. And then there's flood insurance, which is probably one of the biggest misconceptions in homeowners insurance. Standard homeowners policies typically do not cover flood damage, and flood zones aren't always obvious. People often assume flood insurance only applies directly on the ocean, but we also see flood exposure near rivers, low-lying areas, and even places that simply experience poor drainage after major storms. For some homeowners, scheduled personal property coverage may also make sense. It's additional protection for higher valued items like engagement rings, jewelry, artwork, collectibles, cameras, or certain musical instruments. A standard home policy usually includes limits on those categories, so additional coverage may be needed depending on the item. So while homeowners insurance provides a strong foundation of protection, there are often additional coverages worth discussing depending on the property, location, and the homeowner's individual situation. Especially in New England, some homes are simply more difficult to insure than others. Older homes can have outdated wiring, old plumbing, aging roofs, knob and tube, or heating systems insurance companies don't really love to insure. And sometimes buyers get emotionally attached to a beautiful older home without realizing insurance may become more expensive or more limited. We can also see this with seasonal camps, coastal homes and vacant homes, or homes that are far away from fire departments, believe it or not. So this is one reason we always recommend getting insurance early during the buying process. A deductible is basically your portion of risk before insurance pays. So if you have a $1,000 deductible and a covered claim causes $10,000 of damage, you generally pay the first $1,000 and insurance would pay the remaining covered amount. Typically, higher deductibles equal lower monthly payments. Lower deductibles equal higher monthly payments. It's basically a balance between how much risk am I comfortable taking on myself. My biggest advice for first-time home buyers is don't just shop insurance based on price alone. Actually ask questions, because two quotes can look very similar at first glance, but they can have very different deductibles, water coverage, liability limits, endorsements, or exclusions. Especially in New Hampshire and Maine, where we have these older homes, the winter weather, the coastal exposure, lake properties, and unique construction, having the right coverage really matters. If you're buying your first home in the Seacoast area and you have questions about homeowners insurance, inspections, flood zones, or how coverage works, feel free to reach out to Portsmouth Atlantic Insurance. And subscribe because we're creating an entire playlist for first-time and second-time home buyers throughout New Hampshire and Maine.